Good day, everybody. My name is John Wood. I'm the founder of Room to Read and a very proud investor in a company called Green Monday. David Yeung, the founder and CEO of Green Monday, is with us. He and I are both in Hong Kong, both regretting that we cannot be with you in person. I certainly really enjoyed my time last year in Singapore, meeting so many of you, but I'm thrilled to have been invited by the team to come back this year in a different role, that of moderator, to introduce a business person, a leader, a humanitarian I greatly admire, David Yeung. David, welcome to the Global Wellness Summit.
Well, thank you for having me, and well, hello to everyone.
I invited David to get into Green Monday, the company, but when I interview people, I like to start with you, the person. So let me start. You grew up here in this incredible city of Hong Kong, were educated in America, came back to Hong Kong to start the company, but tell us what you were like. What were you like when you were a little person? What was your life like growing up? And what values did your parents instill in you?
Right. Wow. I mean, that goes several decades back when I was a kid. Well, now, of course, with Green Monday, we promote plant-based diet, meat reduction. Even when I was a kid, I was never a fan of meat or seafood. That was in me from very early days. I always love to share the story that as a kid, when I followed my mom to wet market and, to see all the, the meat hanging and, the fresh seafood and, we just take them out of the tank and, the butcher would, process them. I mean, those were some of the, I guess, the early moments of my life when I thought, this is not for me. And I really prefer not to, cause any harm or any suffering. So even though I didn't start as a vegetarian at a very young age, but those kind of experience or exposure just kind of brought me. I started to lean against too much meat consumption. I moved to the States when I was 16, and then by early 20s, I mean, just through a little bit of serendipity, when I read more books about Zen Buddhism and everything, I start my days of vegetarian. So that was kind of, a little bit of my background on what led me to my change of diet and a little bit of kind of my value.
So you were kind of like me, you were a flexitarian when you were young, but then you went over and crossed the chasm to going to being a vegetarian. And you started out, David, as more of an activist. I still remember when you brought what was then in the States called the Meatless Monday movement to Hong Kong and called it Green Monday. Tell us about what caused you to kind of convince this city that loves meat and loves pork and loves seafood. And here you are saying, don't eat meat on Mondays. What was that like for you?
Well, it was ultra difficult, first of all. It was not the most popular message to tell people, hey, you should be eating less of this and eating less of that. Vegetarianism has always had this stigma in Asia, not just Hong Kong, but multiple parts and different regions within Asia. People would perceive that as, well, the nicest negative would be just say boring or old-fashioned, but the even more negative perception would be, this is, it means no food to eat. It is a sign of the opposite of affluence. So people really associate the quite negative things or negative ideas surrounding, vegetarianism. Now, but of course, fast forward to, where the era that we are in right now, this isn't just a moral discussion or like kind of an ethical discussion, but really, I mean, there's a lot of science behind, from a climate change, from a sustainability standpoint, and from a health standpoint, why we should be reducing meats. Again, doesn't mean we need to convert everyone to become a full vegan or vegetarian, but just less meat. So in Hong Kong, of course, is a very dense city, but at the same time, super connected and very receptive to new ideas. So when we start to rebrand, vegetarianism and create a movement and call it Green Monday, something that is a lot more modern and definitely science and numbers space. And then we recruit a lot of celebrities to be our ambassadors. These are people who, again, they may not be vegan themselves, but they just say 1 day a week, why not, right? This is something good for you, good for the planet, good for animals. So through the early days of Green Monday, from 2012 to 2015, 16, we kind of laid the cultural foundation that, hey, you know, reducing meat actually is a new trend and is something that we all need to do as our global population, you know, keep rising and rising.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, I've traveled with friends who are vegetarian or vegan through places like Nepal and the Himalayas, and I often felt badly for them. Like I felt like I was eating better than they were eating. They of course got the halo effect of, hey, I'm vegetarian, but a lot of times, like, you know, there's a reason there's a saying called "eat your vegetables." It's kind of been perceived as a thing that you didn't really want to do or you didn't really like to do. One thing you guys have focused on is taking plant-based proteins and making them actually taste good. It's what converted me to being more flexitarian. One of your products I think is really interesting that people may, on this summit, may or may not know about, is a product called Omnipork. Tell us what Omnipork is. Tell us the market opportunity and why Omnipork exists as a product, not just one product now, but a whole product line.
Right. Now, with food, I mean, 99.999% people, I mean, enjoy food for the taste, you know, for the experience. I mean, no matter how many, you know, scientific data we put behind it, I mean, people do not look at pork or beef or chicken and immediately associate, you know, carbon footprint or water footprint. In fact, you know, like even for people who are very health conscious and look at calories, that's still a relatively small percentage of people. So, you know, taste is paramount. And in the case of Asia, the most consumed meat is beef or chicken. It is pork. So very different from North America. You know, beef and chicken are by far number one. Number two, pork is a distant third. In Asia, pork is animal protein. China, 65% of all meat consumed is pork. And that, you know, similar ratio applies to most of the Asia Pacific countries. So with Omnipork, my idea and the team's idea is that we cannot just tell people to reduce without offering alternative. Just like with, you know, energy, that solar panel, wind turbine, with vehicles and transportation, we now have, you know, electric vehicles and, you know, new energy cars. So I kind of always know that the advocacy of sustainability must also come with innovation. And with food or with animal protein, what is the new way that we can, you know, shift people towards without sacrificing taste, without sacrificing, you know, all the usual food that they have been eating all their lives, but, you know, substitute it from animal derived to plants derived. So Omnipork is a versatile, you know, pork alternative that works extremely well in Asian cuisine and, quite frankly, in all cuisines.
Criticism of some products so that they're not very healthy, but tell us just what are the ingredients of Omnipork? Because it's amazing to me like how simple, yet as a person who uses Omnipork a lot in dumplings and in pastas, I've been very impressed. What are the ingredients in Omnipork?
Omnipork has a, you know, compared to a lot of other meat alternative, we really have a short ingredient list. It's made now in Asia, soy is not an issue. So we made one of the key ingredient is non-GMO soy. Our minced product has the pea protein, has shiitake mushroom and coconut oil. The other product that we have, which is Omnipork luncheon meat, and that one we made it with non-GMO soy and wheat. Again, gluten allergy is not a problem for majority of Asian people. So those are some of the very natural and clean ingredients we use. It is indeed quite surreal. Every time when I taste, you know, a dumpling made with Omnipork or, you know, the luncheon meat, it's still kind of, I still feel very surreal that, you know, it can taste so real, but it is completely plant derived.
Yeah, and one thing I love when I tell people about Omnipork and about Green Monday is I say, if you think 350 million Americans eat a lot of beef and a lot of chicken, you got 5 billion plus Asians. And Green Monday operates across Japan, South Korea, mainland China. There's 1.3 billion people there alone, across Thailand, across Singapore. And one thing I think is appealing to it also is the health benefits. This is, of course, the Global Wellness Summit. Can you compare OmniPork to real pork and give us a couple of the health benefits?
Well, I mean, we're talking about dramatically, significantly lower in terms of calories, in terms of fat. We're talking, I mean, more than 50% lower. So really, less than half the calorie, the fats. Of course, no cholesterol because it is plant-based, and we don't have to worry about hormones, antibiotics, and all that. So all in all, it's a much healthier product. And then the other things that, now, of course, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, soy and gluten are not concerns for Asian people. Now, bring it to the Asian context. I think, John, you mentioned something extremely important. Again, Asia has more than 60% of global population. So if we want to address, both public health issues and climate change issues, we must address the Asian population. Now, ironically, even in China nowadays, because of fast food, because of, many of these, kind of new diets, obesity has become a huge problem, not just in the US, but in China as well. Easily we're talking about 30% or 35% of kids in China nowadays are obese, which is unheard of as recent as even 15 years ago. So shifting them to a less meat diet, for people around the world, and including in Asia, is actually a very urgent need.
Well, for those who have not had the benefit of traveling or living in China, it's important to say that, because of the one-child policy, quite often, if you're a young person in China, you have 2 parents and 4 grandparents doting over you, and they don't have a lot of kids around them. So literally, like, that one child gets spoiled, and you have very high levels of obesity. Even the Singapore government has declared this being something that they really want to figure out how to tackle at the government level, because they want to be able to have their own protein done locally. Quite often that means products like OmniPork. But in addition to being an innovator, David, you're also an investor. And Green Monday Ventures was an early investor in Beyond, an investor in Califia, which does, of course, plant-based milk, which I'm a big fan of. Talk a little bit about your early days of deciding to not just be an entrepreneur and an innovator, but also to be investing in young, growing companies in this space.
Now, if we want to shift the world to a less meat diet, less meat and dairy diets, there must be options, there must be choices. We all need, we crave choices, we crave options. So I kind of know all along that we need to build not just a single brand or a single product, but we need to create a platform of products that, some of them are more catered to, Oriental cuisine, and some are just more Western and more global. So in my early days, of founding Green Monday, that was back in 2013, 14, 15, I constantly travel to the US. I constantly meet entrepreneurs and scientists who are in this space. And as you mentioned, Califia, Beyond Meat, Perfect Day, these are among the innovative, category leading startups. Well, now not startups anymore. They are becoming, iconic leaders of this space. But I love the investment in one way is, of course, the financial investment, but much more importantly is this is a strategic partnership between us and them. And oftentimes we are their partner for their entry into Asia. So whether that means, of course, product distribution, marketing, branding, and just overall learning of the market. We would provide a lot of local knowledge and advice to them on how to adapt. The last thing, and probably the worst thing that a company or an entrepreneur would think of is just whatever works in one country, in this case maybe the US, would work in another country, whether it's China or Singapore or Thailand or Korea, Japan. So having those local knowledge and relaying those to them in order to help them adapt to the local market is really win-win for both them and for us.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that one thing that Green Monday has done very well is set up this platform company to be a distributor, because quite often grocery stores or restaurant groups, whether it be Yum Brands or McDonald's, or whether it be a grocery store chain, they don't want to go to 50 different suppliers to try to find plant-based. They want to go to one company. And one thing that you've done really interesting, I think, is tell me, or tell our audience, how many points of sale do you now have in across Asia, and then how many products?
Right. Now we are in over 10 markets. So you mentioned, from Japan, Korea, mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan to Southeast Asia, covering more than, 10, 11, 12 markets. We are in over 20,000 points of sales, and that number is rising daily, weekly. So I'm not even most up to date in terms of whether we're up to 23 or 25,000. So north of 20,000. We are working with some of the most prominent global and local chains and brands. So McDonald's in Hong Kong, Starbucks in China, Taiwan, Thailand, Yeung Group. I mean, there are so many major food service and retail chains that we work with. We very much are the category, we represent the category. I mean, to say we are a leader, I mean, back 4 or 5 years ago, or even longer, no one was talking about plant-based. So we really represent the category. So when someone look for non-dairy options or meat alternative options, I mean, Green Monday offer the whole range of, variety and brands to them. So really, we are facilitating and accelerating the adoption across the whole region. It's a win for for the brands. It's a win for the outlets who want to introduce this on their menu or in the supermarket aisles.
Great. So over 200 products, over 20,000 points of distribution, about 12 countries across Asia.
Yes.
Working now to do more in the US, working now to do more in Australia, the UAE. So coming to more markets. We're running low on time, but also just, you also had an incredible fundraising round closed last month, a $70 million round. So congratulations, you're well capitalized. What does that mean for you?
Well, it means that we have even more resources to boost our R&D, to boost our distribution, to set up flagship stores across Asia. So people who are unfamiliar with this emerging new food trend can now come in and try this new, or not just the food, but experience the new lifestyle. So really across the board, I mean, we are looking at rapid expansion and really, for wellness, for health, for the planet, for animals. I mean, it just win across the board. So, with many years of foundation being laid, we're now in the position really to let this take off and move the needle in a big way.
Well, it's fun to watch because if I'm in Taiwan and I go to the most famous dumpling chain, I see Omniport. These days in my 7-Eleven outlets in Hong Kong, I see your Omni Eats, the frozen microwavable Thai basil. Thai basil Omniport with rice. People who are in Shanghai can go to Starbucks or Taco Bell. At a Taco Bell, they can actually eat an Omniport taco. So it's fun to see it really growing and around the world. In the 2 minutes we have left, I'm going to ask you 2 lightning round questions. This is the Global Wellness Summit. Besides eating well, what does David Yeung do to take good care of himself?
I make sure I rest. I mean, I have a very hectic life. I mean, if not because of COVID, I travel like crazy. So I make sure I protect my, weekends and make sure I spend time with family and rest. That is just crucial. If we're talking about sustainability, we must make sure that I myself need to be sustainable.
Cool. And then last question. You're still a relatively young man. You're more than a decade younger than me. But when you're old and you're sitting in your rocking chair looking back on your life, what do you want to say?
I just want to say that, I maximize, the time I have on this planet. And, I've given back more than I've taken, just really creating good impact, positive impacts.
And I think you're also one day going to say that you converted John Wood from a meat eater to a flexitarian. Then you eventually come across the line from a flexitarian to a vegetarian. You're still working on that. And you're making some good progress. You still got a little ways to go there, but we got to have goals in life. David, people can find you where? LinkedIn?
Easily, yes. Just look me up. My last name is Yeung. So David Yeung. Look me up on LinkedIn.
Great. I'm also on LinkedIn under John Wood RTR. The RTR standing for Room to Read. So to the entire team of the Global Wellness Summit, thank you so much for accommodating David and I. We're so sad we couldn't be there in person. But we're happy to have appeared via video. And just thank you to all of you for the opportunity. I hope you will check out Green Monday. I believe it is one of the world's next great companies. And I think there's a lot we can learn, not only from this, but also just the size of this opportunity in Asia with over 5.5 billion consumers is unparalleled, not just from the business opportunity, but also our ability to affect the planet and to have less cruelty to animals. It is truly a purpose-driven business. It's truly a win-win-win. David, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody from Hong Kong. Thanks for being with us.